Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. I'm Nick Park and I'm doing a series of messages on congruity. Congruity means things that go together well. When two things don't fit together well, if they are in contradiction, they are incongruous. But when they go well together, they have congruity. And God has made things to fit together well. We see this all around us in creation. We see this how in the world operates. You know what? Even the fact that we have such a thing as a total eclipse of the sun is to do with the exact ratios between the size of the sun to the moon and the distance from the sun and the moon to the earth. And these ratios and these sizes combine to create a perfect eclipse of the sun when the moon passes in front of it. And that's an example of how God has made things to fit together, even the huge things to do with space, but also the small things in our lives and also spiritual things. Two things that go together well that I want to talk about today are forgiveness and forgiveness. Now, some of you are saying, hang on, that's one thing, you're just saying it twice. But there's two different kinds of forgiveness, of course. There's our forgiveness towards other people, and there's God's forgiveness towards us. You know, whenever God has forgiven us, we must forgive other people. These two things go together. That's why Jesus taught us to pray in the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Now, sometimes we got to work hard to forgive people. Sometimes you got to forgive people more than once. Peter said to Jesus, how many times should I forgive somebody that has wronged me? 7 times, or, and Jesus said 70 times 7, which was actually a saying that was like to infinity. And that doesn't mean that somebody's necessarily sinned against you 490 times or whatever. Sometimes somebody only sins against you once, and you got to keep forgiving them again and again, because it takes a little while for the forgiveness to stick. But Jesus then told a parable, and he told a parable about a man who has forgiven a great big debt. I mean, we're talking a massive debt. We're talking about a debt that was the equivalent of the national debt of Greece, for example. And God and the master forgave that debt to the servant. But then that servant went and found another servant who owed him a small amount of money and demanded that he repay him, and had him thrown into prison until he could pay him back. Well, the master got to hear about this and he was really angry. So he went again to this first servant who he had forgiven the great big debt to. And he said, now you're going to be thrown into prison. You're going to be tormented there until you can pay me back everything that you owe me, which of course was impossible. Now that's just a parable. A parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. It's not saying that those events actually happened. But this parable is telling us this, that if we are going to be forgiven for the big things, and God has forgiven every one of us for so much, if we don't believe that, we've never really understood what our salvation achieved. God forgave us so much, so we need to forgive other people. And compared to what God has forgiven us of, what we need to forgive somebody else for is comparatively small and trifling. And yet so often we struggle with unforgiveness. And so when we've received God's forgiveness, but we're refusing to forgive somebody else, we are in a place of hypocrisy. We're in a place of contradiction. We're in a place where things are incongruous. And in order for things to go together well, we need forgiveness and forgiveness. We need to receive our forgiveness from God, and we need to give forgiveness and apply forgiveness to those who have wronged us as well. And when we act in forgiveness and when we forgive others, then we're able to forgive ourselves, and we're able to walk in the freedom of knowing our sins are forgiven because God has forgiven us. These are things that go together well: forgiveness and forgiveness, our forgiveness and God's forgiveness. And join us again tomorrow. We're going to look at 2 more things that go together well here at Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.